Please, welcome.
Hello, hello. Okay. Well, for people who do not know me, I am a New Yorker, but I did commute in today, so I'm not staying at the hotel. Can't hang out with you later, too late. Thank you to Carlos, Willie, Sam, and the board, and the rest of IVRPA to host a rather amazing conference for such a elite set of photographers who are a little crazy about what they do. So, and I'm glad there's been coffee and everyone got hyphenated and they won't be dozing off unless you had 3 bagels. Okay. Okay. I guess for 45 minutes I'm going to entertain you with some of my work. Although the billing was for what I've been doing as a my most passionate type of work is street photography, but I somehow will have snuck in that project I am doing for the NASA and the Smithsonian with the last space shuttle project, which concluded last year. So they had 3 more launches, and I joined the effort to try to document the 3 launches. So in any case, welcome to New York City for those people who had to travel halfway around the world to get here. Aaron, I think you got the most air miles?
Possibly.
Okay. All right. So part of this presentation is just to inspire you and make you a better panographer. So let me get this mention to that we all will be missing Pat Swovland, who passed away last month, and he was with us in Palmella, who was also an avid educator and cheerful guy who made sure you should be enjoying life while you're living it. But unfortunately, he has left us too early, so we will all miss him. So. Let's see. Okay, this is my opening slide. The street photography with fisheye lenses. So I'm trained as a commercial editorial photographer. I had a photo studio in Manhattan in the 80s and 90s. So I'm been through Madison Avenue and ad agencies and whatnot in those hey years of Madison Avenue advertising. But for the second part of my photo journey, I've turned to panoramic imaging because there was back in 1996, Apple mentioned something called QuickTime VR, and we were amazed that you could take some normal cameras and stitch some pictures together and get something 360 and interactive. And also during those early years, Helmut Dersch came out with panel tools, and those 2 software platforms have made a legacy of what we are practicing now. And I'm glad to see that it continues to thrive as a small industry. And we're kind of educating the rest of the photo community that yes, you can frame your photo and make it nice and 8x10, but there's a lot more in the visual experience that you can bring to your audience when you are a panographer and when you are doing 360 and when you are shooting spherical. So because of the software and the digital imaging, you can get these fantastic fields of view that really it's mind-boggling for the first-time viewer who never seen it before, and they wonder how it's done. But quite literally, I'm able to keep my feet on the ground and still shoot this stuff without hovering above the the surface of the earth. Okay. Okay. Also, in the middle of the presentation, I will show you some of my gear choices. So this is currently my travel arrangement, but you'll see what I use to handle situations that are quite unique, and mostly it's inspiration. I mean, you can put a tripod on the ground and put your fisheye lens on top of it, but there are others creative ways of getting that image. So, but again, it's the fantastic fields of view that you're able to pull out of your experience by photographing it with that in mind. So, okay, so welcome to New York City for all those who come to see the glitz and the nightlife. And we are going to make a click. There's a lot of cultural diversity. You'll see democracy at work. You'll see a lot of public safety officers and patrol cars. They're here to make sure you don't create havoc and cause commotion.
Take me to the place where we came from. Take me to the end so I can see the start. There's only one way to mend a broken heart. Take me to the place where I don't feel so small. Take me where I don't need to stand so tall. Take me to the edge so I can fall apart. There's only one way to mend a broken heart. Take me where love is enough for sale. Take me where our hearts are not so frail. Take me where the fire still owns its spark. There's only one way to mend a broken heart. Teach me how to see when I close my eyes. Teach me to forgive and to apologize. Show me how to love in the darkest dark. There's only one way to mend a broken heart.
So that's 42nd Street. That's opposite 1 Times Square. It's a crossroad of the world, and the buildings there are, you know, billboard advertising has been a trademark of that area. So I photographed Times Square on many occasions, and I am involved in projects where we shoot what's showing up on the advertising marquees. But that's my interpretation of one of the projects. Okay, so it's a street photography is again something I crave to do, and we all, when we become photographers, we carry our camera around our neck and we go shoot life when we go, you know, out exploring. So it's all in us, but we get carried onward to doing assignments for money and bread and butter work, and that's when my advertising career was getting to be burning me out. So when QuickTime came along and offered another visual medium where I hadn't explored those possibilities. So street photography was, most people will think of Henri Cartier-Bresson's work as a body of work that would be considered street photojournalism. So he developed a street style because of the small Leica cameras that he could carry. And this was an age where people were switching over from speed graphics to a miniature camera. And he was able to travel the world. So this is an image that I picked out from his folio, and it is of China. That's just before the country was taken over by the communists. So this is the last days of the nationalist government. But his has how he sees light and shadow and pieces of humanity. They're all lessons to learn how to compose your frame within, or compose your picture within the frame. So taking these photographs is to align your head and eye and heart, and it's a way of life. And truly, we as photographers spend a lot of time toiling with this ultimate goal. People will ask me, what's your favorite image or favorite photograph? And this is one of them. A photographer, Ruth Augen, taking a snapshot on the streets in Florence. She was at that time 29 years old, kind of got a dream assignment to photograph around Europe. And this photograph always struck me as something that I needed to make part of my panoramas. Ruth Augen's American Girl in Italy. And some people will say it looks like it was staged, but reading her memoirs and essays, this was a traveler friend who they were just out to be adventurers and travelers, and this was taking it a half century ago. Now you can, the human interaction never changes, but this remains one of my quintessential photographs that I see, and I will always use as inspiration. So after giving up some of my commercial assignments or career, I'm off doing some traveling photography, and I'm able to do that with some time now. But my lenses are ultimately very wide. So in my bag, I'm carrying full frame fisheyes and 8mm fisheyes. Did someone turn on the laundromat machine? Okay. Okay, maybe I'm standing. Should I move? Okay. All right, so as a commercial photographer, you sort of do advertising, you do, you do the stuff that you need done by a layout. So you're framing your stuff, and but since then, I've needed to hone my edge as far as shooting in real life. So I joined up with some other street photographers who are living legends, and Southeast Asia is where my ancestry is from, but I've never had a chance to spend time there, so I've been spending some time there now. This fellow was one of my mentors, and his name is David Allen Harvey, and he is a National Geo and Magnum photographer, and this was his playground. For 30 years, he was shooting Southeast Asia when I was just trying to figure out cameras. So it was an honor to spend time with David in the streets of what was his backyard. And I got to give him a sense of my perspective, because he is more like a 50mm lens guy. You know, he carries just a Nikon and a 50mm lens, and maybe an extra lens in his pocket. But his vision is, again, you can't fault the guy who's 30 years your elder as far as what you're trying to do. So, but he appreciated my perspective and fascination with having to shoot everything around me. So we spent about 2 weeks together in Bangkok and Hanoi. Pretty much old haunts for him. He's seen the area from the ravages of war to the economic prosperity that's going on. And these environments are curiously void of security cameras and public safety officers and stuff where you can, and the people are friendlier and they're not suspicious that you're going to squeal and complain or end up being malicious to their future. So this is the picture again. Notice the point of view is lower. So I started with it's a portrait of him. I'm doing also environmental portraits of people that affect or I come across in my travels. So it's an environmental portrait of him in his work settings. So, but my point of view is to focus on his tools, his camera, and his subjects. They're eye level. They're not eye level, but they're lower at, when he's shooting, he squats down and changes his, from shooting low to shooting high. But I needed to use things like this, where it's a monopod that allows me to raise my shooting elevation quickly. So I'll go low when I have to. I can go higher above my head if it's necessary. This continues some of the street photo essays that I saw in Bangkok, my stay there. So it's a hot and sweaty city, but again, life has been going on like this far longer than what happens in the States here. It's funny, let me get a laser pointer. Do I have a laser pointer? Let me just get a laser. Yeah. Okay. Apologies for the resolution. I built this at 1024, but the subject here is all these wires. They don't take them down. They just, use them for existing support. So these are people, laying down fiber optic cables. The country is going modern with cellular communications real fast, and it's curious to see how things just get built on top of old. So, and then that's the way they and the grit from, you know, it's a gritty place. I found that if I hang out in unused telephone booths, city life goes by. So people don't use, you know, these public phones anymore. So, and actually, I asked the lady to make a phone call, a fake phone call, but you know, the bus taxis and stuff, they all come by, and but these phones are hardly used anymore. Everyone's so you hang in. I mean, and also it's rare to find an enclosed booth. So I find that, you know, there's 4 panels. There's 4 panels where each is a slice of life in each panel. So you take these tuk-tuks, they're motorcycle taxis with seats out in the back, but these are some of the taxi drivers that wait for you. And they're very colorful at night, and so. I've some of these, this image you've probably seen before. It remains a favorite because it's the most challenging to do. This is a food cart with fried bugs, which it was quite fascinating for me to see who would buy fried bugs for a snack. You know, if you're in New York, you get knish and a hot dog and, you know, bagels, but here in Bangkok, you get fried caterpillars and what seems like farm-raised water bugs, scorpions, and stuff like that. But no. No. Well, they're fried, so they're crunchy. They're protein. Yeah, it's protein. This is a red light district near where we stayed. This is called Soy Cowboy. The story is some Western dude wanted to you know, just make this a bar street, and Soy Cowboy, soy means street in Thai, and it's a cowboy street, but it's red light means not like Amsterdam where, you know, they shoo you away if you bring out a camera, and this is one of the ladies who will just out for some food here. But the challenging thing is these are all like red neon lights, and it's, yeah, your white balance is like, where do you start? But but it remains an interesting picture for me because of the food. I'm always photographing food because I photograph all the food that I eat in case I need to backtrack and say what went wrong. Okay. Okay. And also my favorite city in Vietnam is the old French Quarter in Hanoi. So unlike China where they bulldoze things to build new stuff, Hanoi is still a city where you can see the French colonization influences, and the city moves around with motorbikes. So, and then at night, all the sidewalks become eateries, or they become little cafes, and which is quite different here. You know, in New York, you set up something on the sidewalk and you need a permit. Here, everyone moves out onto the sidewalk and just gets their evening social activities taken care of. Air conditioning is working? Okay. Okay.
board of directors.
Okay, I'll just. You're not. All right, never mind. More sidewalk, activity here. They cook outside because it's heat. It's hot. They just do things outside at night. So I'm attracted to these social differences that I don't see in my own country. So they serve everything without running water, so that's like amazing. Okay. One of my more successful images, it shows the intensity of the sidewalk scene and also the amount of traffic that passes by. I was going to be sitting here, so these people are my hosts.
What are you eating?
Oh, noodle soup.
Oh.
Pho, yes. Pho, rather. Vietnamese pho, noodle soups. Okay. But from experience, if it's cooked, stir-fried right in front of you, then you're fine. Okay, so that's my brief jump into Southeast Asia. Okay. This is a self-portrait. It didn't turn out intentionally, but I like it. It's Flushing Meadow Park hosted the 64 World's Fair, one of the last ones, but I was a little teenager at the time, but the monument stays up. They tore down most of the park, but they left a few things, and this is unisphere remains one of the symbols of the World's Fair. It's you see it if you're driving out to Long Island or going to a ball game, or if you're going to the tennis, the U.S. Tennis Open. But on this occasion, the fountains weren't turned on yet, and kids do climb up on here and do graffiti on here. But this was it's a view that I only discovered later, so that's why it's amazing to me that this imaging format remains to the fueled my sense of creativity. So, and I witnessed that about 13 years ago with my first panorama. So, unisphere is somewhat unique. This still remains kind of like one of the largest giant steel globes made by U.S. Steel. And Sam has photographed it for his location scouting, but most people don't climb onto the base and see it like this. And since it was one of the first global symbols of global peace, built in the 60s when the whole rest of the world was like, at everyone's necks, doing bad things. So, okay. I sneak in a few things of Times Square. Most people first saw my work with the New Year's Eve stuff. And these are some images that still remain unpublished because they're more like self-portraits. Earlier days in Times Square, before security got tighter, it was a lot more festive, and the confetti that they threw off the roofs were like barrels and tons of confetti. And so this is typical of how it would look if you were up on a roof and you were involved in throwing the confetti, which consisted of little slivers of foil. This was confetti before the marketing people said, let's put you know, a message on them. You know, Target was a sponsor. And they tried to print Target stuff and say, you know, coupon for this. And like and then the confetti wouldn't be flying; they would just like drop to the ground because because they were so heavy now with ink. And they, you know, they tried plastic, and so it wouldn't stay in the air long enough. These are just Mylar, you know, with no advertising on it. But these days they're trying to, you know, put a few messages on confetti so people will pick them up and, you know, take them as a coupon or something like that. But I am over here. This is the ABC soundstage. Actually, this might be the same year I did the Mariah Carey panorama. But I love this lady with her coat that says, you know, with the clock on it. So time continues to march on, and this is Times Square. But again, you shoot kind of frantically because the confetti, you try to time it so it's at its maximum density in the air. A few minutes later, if you're still fussing with your camera, it's all gone. Okay. Let's see. Currents. I am still shooting on New Year's Eve if I'm getting a commission. So this was, what was it? Okay. Oh, 212. Okay, 212. So this is last year. And again, if you're late for your location, you screwed up. So the previous year I was late for the location because people take your place, so the security locks down and you can't get to your location. So either, and, you know, it's not like you leave your camera there. It says, you know, you can't get up on the sound stage if they lock things down, because security is an issue now, or continues to become a bigger issue, and everyone's squeamish, and the sound stages are smaller, and they have trying to pack more celebrities into these events. But again, this just remains as a self-portrait of the event, because I do these things, and it's hard to dodge around the camera. I'll show you a rig. I usually shoot, since I've learned from the past, tripods will be kicked and you're going to be frowned upon. So I clamp to these rails. The ultimate location is determined on, you know, how far you can talk your way into the scene. But Ryan Seacrest is here, and you have the camera booms that are swinging, and they don't want they don't want cameras on sticks in their field of view. So usually I'm relegated to the side. But the assignment is to do it at midnight when the fireworks go off and the confetti is in the air.
Who's the client?
I'm sorry, question?
Who's the client?
Client this time was News Corp. In the past it's been ABC, but News Corp commissioned this one. And I don't have the rights to publish it. They have exclusive rights for 6 months. But this is my personal one. Okay. One more. Okay. Why I do this? I bang my head on the wall. It's like I was trying to do a series over the years, so maybe I have 10 years worth or something like that, and do a series. It's really a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. I do have an associate producer, an assistant that watches my back and carries my gear when I go hunting for pictures. So this year this particular shot was for the USO, and let me see. This statue is Father Duffy. This is called Duffy Square within Times Square. Up here is now replaced by those red steps that have been finally put in place by the Times Square Alliance. There's talk of a group photo opposite the Bank of America on Friday when we go for dinner at Carmine's.
Yes.
So this would be the area just across the way from this statue here. Or you can meet at this statue and see where there's an open space for a group picture. And I hope someone will do it, not me. Okay.
You're hired.
Everyone will do a lot. Everyone will do their own, but I hope it doesn't rest on my shoulders anyway. Anyways, so Duffy Square is the statue, but the easiest thing is see the Bank of America sign. This is the American Eagle super sign, which is still under construction when this was shot. But the Marriott marquee is over here. Okay. When I was visiting a city in Xi'an, we were on a night when there was a full lunar eclipse event. And the ingenuities of these local folks, I never saw these things. These are like giant Newtonian reflector telescopes on wheels. They like, like you can see the size of this thing. And he, when he finishes with, his setup, he just lowers it and then bikes away. It's like, so, but the event was this lunar eclipse, and there were more telescopes down here, but I had never seen this before. So, and then he had this big laser pointing at, so he's collecting, little contributions for people who want to peek through the telescope. But it gave me an idea to do a personal series where I usually do light painting in my work because I shoot dark spaces, or I shoot places where the lighting is kind of marginal, and you bring your own lighting or flash torches and you start painting. So most photographers are doing that, especially with the LED lighting. They run cool, but the color temperatures are funky. But I always carry these laser pointers. Let's see. But it gave me an idea to add a laser effect to some environmental panoramas. So that brings up this one, which is I did in our visit to Palmela last year, and we were staying at the hotel, and I was just hanging out or getting us a feel of the place, and I ran into Frank Friedrich, who was also attending, and was and he became this my model for this photograph. This was Frank trying to understand what I was trying to say and do. I had him pose. I lit him, or I drew a line around him, and but the whole background setting was just at the point where the sky was what it was, and the compositional elements is what it was. And this is added in Photoshop. This is straight line is Photoshop, but it's effective. So it became one of my nicer pictures because everything just fell together. The sky was cooperating. And this ended up being an Epson Award. I think it won 7th place, but somewhere around there. I did a series. I entered 3 of them. They all been recognized. So this was the next one. This is the Egg, the National Theater in Beijing, and this was the moon that was out. And this is an enhancement of the quality of air. But nevertheless, it's an interpretation of what I wanted to do. Also, I guess the editors at the Epson Awards like this kind of stuff, and they gave that recognition. And I have this one. Also, turned out that this was a full moon, a lantern festival in Laos and Luang Prabang, and all these Buddhist monks are out lighting lanterns. And it was fascinating to see in this part of the country they do these sky lanterns. They have like a lampshade kind of hot air device, and they light a candle, and the hot air floats the sky lantern. And when you see hundreds of these, it's such an amazing experience. You can't do that here because you'll set forest fires, but they do it over there without any regard for the consequences. Okay, so all right, so when I spoke about fantastic fields of view, most people you realize or know about small planet projections, but your clients always get kind of like a big kick when you show it. So this is a little sequence, not a sequence, but thanks to KR Pano and Auto Pano Pro, we can sort of like check the box that says make one of these things, and we have one. So, but it's a sky, and it's where you're at that makes it special. So, and luckily we had a good sky when I was climbing up to this temple mound, which is elevates you above the rest of the forest. So most people try to climb up here to see the sunset. And if you've ever been to Angkor, this is one of the places you can go. I'm trying to put as much visual information into my work. I want people to spend 5-10 minutes staring at my image. Most images you say, 15 seconds, I'm gone, I've seen it before, or it doesn't last long enough for you to remember it. Cut that short. Okay, that's enough. Okay. All right, so what do I carry or what do I use in my efforts to put that camera where I need it? Monopods have been with me for the longest time after I realized I was long tripod legs and height problems became a nuisance. To set up a tripod that's this high and then walking around it and kicking it and is all that stuff that that is aggravating. So the pole panoramas are, when you get beyond the basics, you realize you don't have to be vertical to shoot a panorama. You can there's no horizon. The horizon does not have to be completely level as with a partial panorama where you don't have enough information to re-level it. So in the days when I was doing a little bit of photojournalism, I was wanting to get in the middle of things. That's why your whole effort is trying to get as close to the middle of things. So I was blocked by all this other media coverage, and the idea of holding the camera on your stick above the video cameras and came to be a technique that I know about. I can do it, and sometimes it becomes necessary. So the holding, especially with the smaller cameras, you don't have to really, tire out so easily. But again, you don't have to shoot your panoramas at where you have to be level with the horizon, as long as you kind of turn your camera around the nodal point quickly. Okay. All right, my batteries went on my laser pointer. Anyway, so there's a technique like this that maybe opens up to possibilities. Willie is famous for this stuff. He sticks them out the window and does a decent job as long as you have a steady hand and can get that 4, 5, 6 shots before things change. So all right, the other setup that I've used in the past was to use a very small, I'm going to get another laser pointer, sorry. Take another one.
Jook, can you tell us what equipment you're using?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us what equipment you're using?
Oh, okay. All these equipment has changed over the years, but this would have been 5D, okay, not a Mark II. So this is I didn't list the camera because those things have changed, but the Velbon is a monopod that's not too expensive, fiber carbon, about $100 as opposed to a Gitso at $300-400. There's a Manfrotto rotator you're familiar with. It's pretty heavy, but it kind of provides ballast or lowers the center of gravity for things to not topple over. The Aerotech leveling base It's like a low profile ball head. You only need to, you know, you want to just make sure things just don't tip over, and that's the Aerotech ball head. And the Manfrotto releases, if you're all familiar with grip equipment, it's the heavier six-sided quick release place. This is a JB, this is the website, since it's not a popular, I don't know if B&H carries it, but this is what it is. It's a four-legged stand that wedding photographers put their Hasselblads on, or lights. It's a four-legged stand, so it's stable, but it's, as you can see, very low profile. And this is the footprint of this. Okay. And you have a choice when you go traveling. You either bring one of these things or you bring one of these things. So we have a tendency to do our panoramas in tight spaces, and you're walking around and you're doing, you're dancing around. So I have a preference to have this. This is a Traveler Gitzo, and it breaks down and fits in my luggage or backpack. And then this is a small table pod. Unfortunately, Gitzo doesn't make this anymore, so you'll have to
buy yours.
Yeah, but that's the, you may be able to find it in an old camera store. That's the model. I don't know why they discontinued it. So that's the monopod on a table pod approach. You can also use yourself if you don't have the height. You find that if you're balanced, then you're pretty much on the same spot. So, and then obviously the closest objects you want to keep not too close, but these things can work if you can do it that way. I mentioned these are a couple of wireless remotes that are useful for me. I like them now because the cables are separate. Usually you buy a remote and the cable goes bad and you gotta replace the whole thing. But these are, they work on a megahertz frequency, and they can be long range. And the cable, if you use different camera systems, you just change out the cable.
It's not called, it's not Pearstone anymore, it's Velcro.
Yeah, come on the various names.
Yeah, they just changed it because they have
Yeah,
it here, but they
I
don't
think
know.
B&H doesn't carry Pearstone.
Pearstone stopped making, they're under the Velcro name. I just
Oh, I've seen them. Yeah, they also do other functions like intervalometer and time lapse.
And on multiple shots, it's 2 per second is the maximum. So
Okay,
if you
but
grab-
everyone has their own sources of wireless remotes. I've gone through a ton of them because the wires break or the connectors get unreliable. Here is a clamp system that I use when I can't be dancing around a tripod. It's a Bogan. I do a quick release so I can change this to a clamp, and here it is on, you can see that it's here during that Times Square shoot. So it's a Bogan clamp, it's a hex plate quick release, it's a Bogan 300N rotator, or it's an Aerotech leveling head, rotator, and stuff like that. This weighs a bit, but it's ballast for a top-heavy contraption. And then you have the tripod with the monopod on top, which is what most people will carry. So it gives you that height without a big footprint, or without carrying a very large tripod, just to give you that height. Okay, and we have Bill Bailey also helped us with some gear to cover these space shuttle launches. And so the Nodal Ninja gear came in handy to do all kinds of weird stuff. but this is my, I'll slip into what I did. That's the space launch. At that time I joined the project, there was 3 more launches, so I wanted to do something unique because it's been photographed for 30 years and people just point long lenses at the launch, and everyone's pictures looks kind of like basically who did the, they all look the same. So I needed something that was signature to myself, and then so I wanted to do this with an 8mm fisheye, and obviously where they allow you to photograph it, the shuttle would be hardly visible. So I got a notion that I really wanted to photograph the launch with the plume cloud, the exhaust that accompanies a launch, since the solid fuel rockets from these rockets creates a huge condensation cloud, or unlike a rocket that just has liquid propellant and there's no exhaust. Okay, this was a setup that I prototyped in a plastic container, and I used an NN4 to allow me to point up and mount. This is a timer and a sound trigger. So you have to set up these things a day ahead, and no one's in the launch area. So all the cameras are either triggered. Those who have extra privileges can trigger by wire. Those who are guests have to time these things with a sound trigger. So, but this is an 8mm Nikkor on a Canon 5D Mark II. Okay, so that's how that looks. That sound trigger. It was to when the sound trigger went off, it was the camera would just fill up its buffer and take in as much of the. It only happens a few seconds and the whole thing is gone. This was my first attempt at the launch after 2 postponements. So we had, you go out the day before. You wake up early in the morning before dawn. You go to Kennedy Space Center. You queue in with all the other press and media photographers who are setting up their own cameras, and you get out there and you set up your gear and you wait for the launch the next day. I did this 3 times because it was postponed for technical difficulties. So you retrieve it, you replace your batteries and all that nonsense. This launch was the Discovery launch. It took place in late afternoon, which was fortunate because this is the setting sun over here. All right, this is a little time lapse video, but it's starting to ignite. So this is a water tower. It dumps water into the flame trench, and it mixes with the solid rocket propellant, and it creates a huge plume cloud, which is caustic because it's got hydrochloric acid in it. But my vision was to photograph the plume cloud not as much as the line, because everyone else is shooting this. So you can see let me try to stop. Maybe I can pause this. Let me see. Can I pause this? No, I can't. All right. I jumped ahead of myself. Okay. This is just looping back and forth. But I'm taking 1 frame out of this sequence. But this is what I wanted to include in my panorama. And this stuff is coming towards the camera, and it usually rains on your camera, and it's got hydrochloric acid in its, and you can't run all, you can't run out and put a cover on it. It sits there for a day because NASA has to clear the area or certify that it's safe to go back and get your gear. But it's sitting out in the sun and it's baking and it's got, it's got exhaust debris all over your stuff. Luckily, the wind did not blow on top of the camera. I tried this shot 2 more times with the last 2 shuttles, but there were different times of the day and the sky was not blue. It was like low-lying cloud cover, which they shouldn't have launched through low-lying clouds because they can't track the launch if there's something went wrong. But they're on a schedule and the budget, and they're running out of low on their budget. But this was the time lapse. So I take 1 frame out of the time lapse. So I took this frame where it's just clearing the launch tower, and you take that frame and you reproject it. You rectify the hemisphere, and this is that shot that I worked on. I had a second camera shooting the ground. Okay. This is the camera setup that was shooting that time lapse of the hemisphere. So when you're that close, your tripod is tethered to the ground and sandbagged because the vibration and air pressure will knock it over if it doesn't, if it's not that secure. There's a lot of other cameras, but they're under the horizon because this is in a trench, so you don't see the other equipment. But they're really far away. So this is as close as NASA would allow me to set this up. So this is as a drain off for the water, but it provided me a visual foreground that leads up to the launch. Okay. So this is the fisheye lens that you saw earlier unboxed. And so this was my composition. So a second camera was used to do the ground in half of the panorama, and I married the 2 together. So, and it got some recognition, so it's in the PDN Photo Annual for 2012. You saw this in Palmela. This is the stereographic version of it. Some of the people that made it possible for me to get so close, was an unusual request. Normally they have designated areas for media and press photographers, and you set your camera up and that's it. There's no, that's where you're allowed, So we had to request that I set something up real close, as close as they can allow me. So these are the 2 people from the NASA Public Affairs Office. He's the gentleman that coordinates all this. I did an environmental portrait of him in his office. And there's another person. I was going to say men are from Mars, ladies are from Venus, so you can see by their office how they conduct their public image. So Kandria is also the person who arranged for me to photograph in and around the shuttle when it was on the ground again. I got more.
You have 20 minutes of advice.
All right. You're going to have 10 minutes less of lunch. Sorry. Okay, fire and launch control at the Kennedy Space Center. Aside from this project, I photographed the complex at Kennedy Space Center, but these are boring shots. The Smithsonian got me to shoot the interiors again before they locked. They sealed them up for the delivery to Washington, D.C., so I spent really like 3 hours unencumbered by other people wanting to do the same. So I got the chance to photograph this on my own schedule, because usually you get 10 minutes and the next party comes along and pushes you away, and you can't do what you want. So so it's the cockpit, but many people, you've seen this, the flight deck, seen this before. This is the mid deck. This is their living room. Okay, so it's downstairs. The flight deck is up here, and you got these ladders down to the mid deck. And this is the hatch to the payload bay, and this is a service hatch. And all this is storage lockers for all their stuff. There's usually there's 2 chairs set up here, but the handle crew is 6. There's 1 chair that's missing that would be bolted here. And all the toilet is in the floor. You lift it up, and but people sleep. You sleep on the wall. You're sort of like stuck on Velcro. This is the payload bay. Right now, it's being housed in the OPF, which is the stands for Orbital Processing Facility. When I mentioned that this is OV-103, Orbital Vehicle 103, it's the 3rd of the 5 shuttles that were built. The first 2 were lost. Discovery was number 3. It's the oldest, and then Endeavour and Atlantis are around. Okay. Okay, so that's how you got a sense of how that image was made with the shuttle launch. It's kind of, I think it remains unique. No one else figures out that they wanted to do something like crazy like that. So, and then there's no more launches that to sort of make that do. Okay, so back on the streets again. Last month I was in Hong Kong, and after a 3-week jaunt through southern China, but this is where I tested a Sony Nex with a Samyang or Rokinon fisheye, and you could see some flare problems, but they're not troublesome, or they may be troublesome. But this fellow in pink, his name is Nick Fan. You'll know him from Fanotech. He's the guy who designs most of the gear that you use. So we met and had spent some time together. And because this was my last frame, and I just wanted to show you another zoom in. Okay. Made with Panel Tour from Color. Again, I say I do commercial assignments, but this is the stuff that I really love and is closer to my heart. So I'm more of a cultural curiosity traveler, and I see things and they go straight to my part of my brain that say I need to bring this back alive as a panorama. She's saying something like, "I'm your woman, don't ignore me." I believe Nick said he'll be at the Panel Tools meeting. So he'll make a public appearance, and you could see his coolest stuff at that time. But so that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.